Thank you so much, Merete and Overgaden, for this wonderful invitation to participate in this seminar on a subject that is very, very familiar to me as a director of an art institution, cultural institution in a time of change and cut downs and lots of challenges. I don't know if it was different 20 years ago, but at least that's how it feels, that it's getting more and more difficult all the time. So I'm happy to share with you some of my experiences from the museum I've been the director of for now 8 years. Time is running. This is the logo, and I thought it would be nice to show you this logo because this logo is also a symbol of the changes we've made together at the museum, also changing its name. When I got the director of that museum in 2007, its name was KØS Museum of Art, which means the Art Museum of Sketches in Køge. And I didn't understand the name, and I could tell that many other people didn't either really understand, except for a few people who really loved it, for a good reason, I think, because it had a fantastic potential. But one of my first analyses was that we had to change the understanding of the name and the whole brand and the whole sort of role of this museum. So this is what I'm going to talk about. We still work on it now. But this is how it looks today. It's based in Køge, which is a small town to the south of Copenhagen. It's actually connected with Copenhagen now. It only takes 35 minutes on the E-train from the central station of Copenhagen to get there. Something that's really hard for people who are based in Copenhagen to actually understand. Because when you go to London, I mean 30 minutes on a train is nothing. But here, you know, mentally to go all the way to Køge, oh my god, that's far away. So that's why I also call this talk, between local skepticism and international potential, because at the same time we experience a growing interest in what we do, also in Copenhagen, but I mean immensely from abroad, because what we work with is public art, and that's something that's really going through enormous changes many places, and there's such a need for new knowledge and sharing of experiences that we are really, really happy that we exist. And for people coming from abroad, 30 minutes on a train to Køge is nothing. It's really just a little exotic trip to the reality of the environment in Denmark, of southern Copenhagen, which is very different from when you go north to Louisiana. Just to also compare, somewhere nobody has a problem going to Louisiana, but what you see there is a much more wealthy area, and where we are, it's much more mixed area with lots of different kinds of lives. So that's really challenging. What you see there is a plaza. I just want to mention briefly that was inaugurated last year. It's created by an artist. We thought when we are a museum of public art, what you see when you get to meet us should be public art. And it's a really, really great sculpture that can be used for performances, exhibitions. It's also, convenient for people in wheelchairs. They can roll up. So it's 111 platforms by Annelise Legarde, who's a great Danish artist based in New York and Copenhagen. So I just want to go back to 2007. I thought this was a really nice picture, also because it's an artwork. Because when I got the job, I was kind of surprised after a few days to discover the problems that I actually took over. They were not that clear to me when I was, convinced to actually take the job. I was just really happy and proud to get it. But I realized that the economy was really, really bad. It was like cut down with 1 million Danish kroners from the city when I started, and that was out of 5 million. So that's a lot. That's 20%. The people working there were really pessimistic. They kept on telling me, this is not possible. It's really not possible. It could be nice, but we already tried that. This kind of feeling that nothing is possible. And it was really sad. And also, I felt that before me, there had been really great people there who really built up as a very young museum a fantastic collection of sketches for models and sketches and models for public artworks. But it was a change from, a time where, as a museum worker, you would be more like an enthusiast. It would come from your heart. You would do it because you loved it. And now the expectations from the the environment, the society around the museum was something much more professional, something that really could work also economically. You should show up with great visitors numbers, and so it was like trying to move something really nice and beautiful and poetic into something much more like professional, which sounds very bad, but for us it has been really great because it has made so many new things possible, and of course we were really grateful to the people who came before us, but we also felt that change was needed, and that's really something that you have to realize when you do something that maybe it's not. It seems tough or it seems maybe cynical, but if you don't do it, then somebody else has to do it, because otherwise this place will just disappear. It will go down, no money, there will be no visitors. It will, and that's something you really just have to realize when you start, working for change. This is just an image I wanted to show you because that's how we felt, actually realizing that this was a museum of art in public spaces. It's fantastic. Yes, we have the collection of the sketches and the models. They also do that in architecture museums because you can't take the building and put it into the museum. So what we collect is the sketches and the models. But that's only one part of it. Of course, that's a collection that defines that this is a museum, and without a collection, you're not a museum. But what about all the knowledge you can produce? What about all the discussions you can have? What about the public space itself? You can go out there and make the exhibitions instead of staying inside the museum and expecting people to come inside your building and experience so many possibilities. And at a time where even in that city of KØS, there was a really great interest in using art, horrible thing, instrumentalizing art, as a vehicle for developing cities, as a cultural sort of vehicle for making better lives, better cities. And that's also what's so interesting. We felt that you could work in a crossfield between architecture, city development, planning, and so on. And we were the only museum with this subject. Like we have a unique selling point. We really have a possibility. And artists agreed with us. When you talk to artists, I did a lot of research in that period. They said, "Yeah, it's super interesting. We got these invitations. We're still pessimistic. And what do they expect from us? At the end of the day, they just want to sell more, real estate, or they want to use it to, increase the values of land and so on, and all these issues, and also the fact that in Denmark we had been going through so many discussions since the 60s, where the Danish Arts Foundation was founded, and a lot of public money was given to, give the people art, and they didn't want this art. There was all these discussions everywhere. Oh, we hate it, so ugly, we don't want it, it looks like it has nothing to do with us, blah, 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 all these kind of superficial discussions that, really didn't change anything. So we thought, okay, if we can, enlighten this debate and find out more about how people actually perceive these works and what the artists actually go through when they produce the artworks. So many things that could be discovered and discussed and help the whole debate become much more, enlightened and worthy and that's what we felt was a possibility. And then I came from I took this book. It's kind of funny to look at it now because coming as an art historian, a curator. And then I went to this, I took this master's degree of museology and museum leadership, and at that time I was still a colleague with Merete in the Danish Arts Agency, and I was studying very hard. And for me, all this business thing and the communication theory was so interesting. And I just can really recommend this book. It's so old now, it's so far, a long time ago, and it's probably really not state of the art, but it's a really, really good book because it's about how you work with, branding and communication in a really, really useful way. Because it's not just, talking about the value of branding, but it's also talking about how to do it. So I can really recommend it. It starts out with, stakeholder analysis, how important it is to really map out your environment and your stakeholders. Because some of our stakeholders we know very well. It's the artists, of course, and it's the public, but you have so many other individual stakeholders depending on your institutions. You have them here in Christianshavn, you have them wherever you go. And it's really, really nice to sit down with your staff and try to look at who are they, what do they mean to us, how would we like them to understand who we are, because we know who we are or who we want to be, but how do they actually think about this? And really do it with your staff in a way that, you know, with an open mind, and not only think about, you know, the art critics and the, you know, the critics you get and how they like you in the art world, because I think we always think about, you know, being liked in the art world, but and that's also really nice when you are part of a, you know, an environment and they like you and it's warm and nice and we agree on this and that and, you know, globalization, blah, blah, blah. But what about all the other stakeholders? How can we really think about them and what do we owe them? How can we give them something? And we also, I just have to see, this I put because, you know, this is an artwork we commissioned by Poseman, who is a street artist, and I really love the way he sort of saw the potential of our local stakeholders, you know, the whole local environment in Korea, because you tend to think, oh, it's a small town, you know, they don't understand culture, you know, Andy Warhol came from Pittsburgh and the only good thing was to get out of there, you know, like, you know, this Lou Reed song. And there's something about it, you know, that people, they prefer to have a better hospital than they prefer to go and see strange sketches about, you know, public art. But our possibility in Korea was really that the city wanted us to collaborate about, you know, a whole new area in the industrial harbor to produce cultural events and exhibitions in that area, and they had some money that we could spend on that. And so we've been producing, you know, public art exhibitions in the local area of the city for the last 8 years, every second year, where we've been able to commission artists to produce new works, and that way, you know, invite people into experiencing what is public art. Not telling them about it through a documentation in the museum with a sketch only, but also, you know, the one-to-one experience in public space, which is a much better way, because then you can have it as a direct experience. And so actually it turned out that the local area, the local stakeholders really wanted to work with us, and after a while, you know, I also had to say to them, you know, well, with this cut down, and it's not very easy, and we have a lot of potential, and blah, 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 and as a new person, you always have this 100 days of kind of, you know, goodwill. And we actually got the money back, which was fantastic, and without that, we couldn't have done what we do. Okay, also in a national level, I just want to say that a lot of interesting projects is going on. This is a new one from Copenhagen by Superflex, you probably all know it, but just to say that everywhere you see this tendency of really interesting projects where artists are involved in developing urban areas. So also at that level we thought, okay, we want to play a bigger role, that's our ambition, at a national level, not only in Korea, but since we get state funding as well, we should also pay back the state funding by, you know, really taking this national responsibility seriously. And that's what we've been doing, for instance, last year, where we went on a national tour to visit 9 memorials and have debates with people at the foot of the memorials. And also in an international level, this is before we changed the name actually, because that was a really hard struggle to get the city to accept the new name. This was a project we did with the city, also looking at 6 different strategies for the role of art in urban development in an international context. And that was really also a starting point for some of the research projects we've done in collaboration with Copenhagen University, where we did a PhD that was, until I think we finished last year. She was graduating as a PhD and now she's doing a postdoc. And this whole sort of urban development area is really something that needs more knowledge production, more discussion and so on. So this is something I made with my PowerPoint. I'm very proud because I have the logo and you can see, because I thought, how do you work with branding? That's the thing, because it's branding something, you know, with a new website or a logo. For us it's been, you know, something that should come from within, from the heart of the organization. And that has been so important, that you don't have sort of a value change where you start with the curators that, you know, come up with an idea for an exhibition, and then it goes through this chain where in the end it's the communication department that sort of communicates. At KØS, also because we're so small, we really work across all the departments from the beginning to, you know, make sure that we really think, okay, together, is this a good idea or not? And that's really hard for also us, you know, the curators, the art historians, to sometimes accept arguments that come from people who don't have our background, because how can they say this about this fantastic artist? You know, we know better than they do. It's really something that we have developed, tried to develop an environment of trust between us, because of course they also have to step down. They can't just sit there and say, blah, 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 we can't communicate this, but really physically we sit together around the table and we look at our experiences together and see, okay, what is a success for us? When do we feel that something is successful? And it's not only when we have a lot of visitors, it's also sometimes when we have been able to present an artist in a fantastic way, you know, that really, you know, in some environments have been, you know, published or mentioned, or it can be both, but really just to be conscious about, okay, in this case, what is it that we would like to stand for? And it's really great. I think it's something that we are able to do now because we've been working together for a while, and there's a lot of changes also, some changes on the staff along the way, but really to know your staff and know your ideas about what is this museum about. And I think that this is something we have come to know that we would like to ask, questions we would like to ask every time we try to qualify a project. If it's a KØS, if it's on brand, it's really about making decisions. It's not something that we make, you know, it was very popular in the 90s that an organization should ask itself what values it was standing for. It's not about that. It's more about how do we qualify a subject? Because there's so much interesting art, there's so many great artists, and there's so many interesting topics, but when we decide what to do, these are the questions we ask. We want to produce new knowledge because we are a museum, so we would like to, you know, to research and come up with new knowledge, also to qualify the debates, and we want the debates to happen. We want the subjects to be original, something that has not been done before, something that has not been talked about before. We want it to be relevant for people. It can be small groups or bigger groups, but we want to think about, okay, for who is this relevant? And we like, you know, this journalistic idea that what we work with has some kind of actual, at the moment, kind of importance for people. So we look a lot at politics and we look at what's going on in the media to get inspiration, because when you work with public art, it's always about art in a public context. So that means that, you know, churches can be super interesting because the church, the institution of the church is going through really big changes, and what role can art play in that context? Or it can be migration, or it can be other big subjects, more like a journalistic way of approaching them. And then how do we communicate? Well, we communicate through all these different sort of outputs. I mean, for instance, when we have an opening, we don't make a nice dinner for 10 people who paid a lot of money. We always do street food. We invite everybody to share a meal with us because we are a public art museum, so we should be, you know, really inviting the public. Just to mention an example, we don't just have a shop. We have a shop where we produce our own T-shirts with artists, because when you walk on the street with a T-shirt with art on it, you're kind of showing it in public space. So, I mean, maybe it sounds really stupid, but it makes sense for us, and I should have worn one actually, but it was too cold. And then we have another strategy that I really appreciate, and which is really difficult, but we continue to do it, and that is that we never do things alone. That's our motto. We always find partners, because, you know, many directors think, okay, if I make a much bigger building, much bigger one, then we can be much stronger, we can have much more visitors. But with our little sketches and models, it's not so much the indoor exhibitions, it's more the outdoor things, and we have the whole world actually to produce in. So what is much better for us is that we always find good partners. It could be the university, it could be the t-shirt producer, Woodwood for instance, it could be any other brand or collaboration partner that would like to walk hand in hand with us. And in that way, the knowledge about KØS is growing, more and more people know about it, and slowly, I hope, that I know I actually know it. But it's a different way of thinking about growth that I really, really like. And this is just to show you some of the projects we have done already. This is from the street art exhibition in the harbor. It's a huge piece by Sten and Lex. They come from Rome, and for them this was the largest piece they ever had the chance to produce. What is really heartbreaking about these works is that we had to remove them afterwards. I had to pay 100,000 Danish kroner to paint it over, which was really horrible, but that's how it is, because we work all the time temporarily. This is some Swedish feminist collective who do knitting. They're called Stickkontakt. Sticka means knitting in Swedish, and they did this bridge for that project. This is from the Copenhagen Cathedral. It's a piece by Tracy Emin, who was part of the contemporary church project where we collaborated with 6 Danish cathedrals around the country, and for Copenhagen she did this light piece. It says, "I felt you and I knew you loved me." It has also been removed and destroyed, which is horrible, but there's many good things about being temporary as well. This is from our national tour last year. It was fantastic. I felt like selling the building afterwards, because why do we even have a building? But what we did was that we went with a tent around the country to 9 places, and we had a journalist to mediate debates about a local sculpture or monument, and we had experts, musicians, people from the local places discussing with us at the stage, so that we had some entertainment. And it was really, really nice. We also did a documentary on it to see how people really thought about the microphone, because they wanted to say something. Yes. Seminars, that's what we do in an international level. We do, seminars on the subject. This is Michael Arad, who was here last year on the memorial project. He designed the 9/11 memorial in New York. This is Chantal Louf from another seminar, just to say that we really try to get these great people to come, and they like Copenhagen, and they also like to discuss the subjects they work with. So it's actually possible, especially if you get some funding. And this was just to finish up with some results that especially politicians like to look at. We had an award in 2011, which is fantastic. We had the highest marks in the cultural agency's quality report last year. We have a lot more money than we had when I started. We have more visitors. We had a lot of press. We count, how many press we get, and so on and so forth, which is just to say that we can also measure some of these things. And this is the final slide, which is another strategy, because last year I went on another leader education in California at the GLI Institute, the Getty Leadership Institute, and realized that what I had been doing was to swim in a blue ocean. I didn't know that when I started, because we were the only museum working with public art, and we had such a great blue ocean. But now there's so many other agents and that work with public art. So we have to think about how do we navigate in this new situation where there's much more focus and competition in this field. It's maybe not so blue anymore, but it's still really nice swimming there. So I think that would be my last words. Thank you.